Do you know what? Okay, so whenever you have a trinomial, bless you, so that has 3 terms, and A is not 1. Now, whenever I mention A is 1 or A is not 1, William, A is the number in front of your x squared term. Okay, so let's do this example. So this is example number 1. Oh, let's try that again. So first, whenever we factor anything, you want to see if there's something you can factor out of all of the terms. So is there a greatest common factor in 7p squared, 11p, and 30? No, there's not, right? So then, since this is a trinomial and A is not 1 because it's 7, then you find the factors of A times C. So that would be 7 times negative 30. So what is 7 times negative 30? Negative 210. So we want to find the factors of negative 210 that add up to B, which is the middle term. So we want to find those that add up to 11. So 20. Okay, so 21 and 10, William already told us, but if not, we'd have to list them and find, right? So if we did 21 and 10, if one is negative and one is positive, we'd have to have which one negative? Listen. Which one would have to be negative? The 10 would be negative, right? And a positive 21? And then we make the, Preston. Then we make the box. Okay, so then it says, you put the first term in the top left square. So what's the first term that we're factoring? So we're going to put 7p squared in the top left square. Okay? Then in the bottom, the last term goes in the bottom right. So the negative 30 will be here. And then the 2 factors that we found go in the remaining 2 squares. It doesn't matter which one you put where. But you do have to add the variable with it. So this would be 21p and a negative 10p. Like I said, if you switched them, you'd still get the same answer. Okay? Now we factor out each column and row. So let's look at the column here. 7p squared and 21p. What's the greatest common factor? 7p. Right? And then this column of negative 10p and a negative 30, what's the greatest common factor? And since they're both negative, then we want to factor out a negative. Okay, so it'll be a negative 10. And then now let's look this first row, 7p squared, 10p. What's the greatest common factor? Just p. And 21p and 30. What's the greatest common factor? 3. Now, if we factored it correctly, then when we multiply the terms on the outside, it would be what's in the square. So like 3, so if we multiply p times 7p, it'll be 7p squared. If we multiply 3 times 7p, it'll be 21. So if we factored it correctly, then they'll multiply. So what's our final answer? And it doesn't matter which one you do first. So we could go 7p minus 10 times, what's our other, p plus 3. Okay, raise your hand if this is starting to be a little more familiar from last year. Good. Okay. All right. Nope. She was mistaken. Yeah. these two have to be right, but the two factors, it doesn't matter. Maybe she put them in a... So if we factor out an n squared, what will be left? 5n squared minus 44n plus 63. Okay. So now we have a trinomial. A is not 1. So what do? We go 5 times 63, just 315. And we want to find factors of 315 that add up to what? Negative 44. Good. So if it has to multiply to be positive that add up to negative, we want to find two factors that are both negative. So when you list factors, hopefully you guys remember this, but always start with 1 and the number. Then go 2, but 2 doesn't go 3 and what? 105? If 2 doesn't divide into it, 4 won't. 5 and what? So far, have we found the right pair yet? No, because they have to both be negative. Not 6. 7? Does 7 go into this? 35? 7 and 45. That won't work yet. What about 9? 9 and what? Okay, so there's our pair that we want. So negative 9 and a negative 35 are the two factors we need, right? So then, what term goes in the top left square? 5n squared, good. And in the bottom right? 63. And does it matter where I put these? No. So it could be negative 9n here, negative 35n here. Now, whenever your corners are negative, or both of these factors are negative, then both of these will be negative. Every time. Okay? Okay, so let's start with the first column. 5n squared and 9n. What's the greatest common factor? An n. Then 35n and 63. What goes into both of those numbers? 7 and a negative 7. And then if we look at the first row, the top row, we have 5n squared, 35n. What's the greatest common factor? No, positive 5n. Because those are negative, then these two will be negative. Okay? And then what about this number, 9n and 63? Will be 9. Right? Because if you think they have to multiply to be what's in there. So 9 times negative, n times negative 9 is negative 9n. Negative 7 times negative 9 is positive 63. So our final answer, don't forget the n squared right here, will be n squared times what? So n minus 7 times 5n minus 9. It doesn't matter the order. Okay? So that's factoring a trinomial when a is not 1. You have to do the box, okay? Now, the last type of problem I'm going to show you is factor by grouping, which you also did this last year. Sorry for the steps. And this is a typo. Okay, so write the steps. I think we're still on page 10, right? So let's write the steps on page 10. Unless you're running out of room, go on to page 11 right now. If you're totally out of room, page 11. What? Then move on to page 11, next one. What? Yeah, I'm saying if you have a little bit of room on page 10, write the steps. If you're out of room, you can go on to page 11. So you use factoring by grouping whenever there are 4 terms. Okay? So whenever there are 4 terms, you can factor by separating them into groups. So let's do an example of this. I know, hang in there with me. So we have 7x cubed minus 4x squared plus 56x minus 32. So is there something that we can factor out of all 4 terms? Like, is there a number that divides into all 4? No, there's not, right? So then if we just group them, so we'll group the first 2 terms together. William, we're going to group the last 2 terms together. Now, let's see if there's a greatest common factor out of each little group. So 7x cubed and negative 4x squared, what's the common factor? X squared. So if we factor out an x squared, what's left? 7x minus 4, right? And then since this sign right here is plus, then we want to keep that plus. And what about 56x and negative 32? So if we factor out an 8, what's 56x divided by 8? 7x. 32 divided by 8 is 4, right?
So would you just like
combine
those, make it like 8x squared locations like 14x?
Well, so now we have x squared is multiplying this 7x minus 4. 8 is multiplying 7x minus 4. So since these are matching, then we can group these together. Okay? So now let's group x squared plus 8 together times the stupid Googling. Sorry. Okay, so x squared plus 8 and then times the matching factor of 7x minus 4. And that's it. Okay? Would not be squared because they're both multiplying the same thing, then we can group them together times the matching. Okay? So we took the, if they're not matching, then you need to maybe switch some things around until they match. But most of the time, if it's factorable, then it will match. Okay? Question, Morgan. So the 8 was from this factor. Yep. So we grouped these two factors together. You guys listen, please. Group these two factors together that were out in front. We grouped them, and then we times that to the matching term that they both matched up with. Yes. Okay?
It doesn't matter what, like, which terms are there, like, if you 8 plus x squared, because if it was a negative one,
Oh.
like negative 7 plus 8, or what? Would you be,
Yeah, if it,
would it matter what?
No. No, it would not matter. Okay? All right, let's do one more. Then we're done with our notes for today. So this will be number 2 for the factoring by grouping. Yep. Oops. Why did it do that? There we go. Okay, is there a number? Yeah.
So we put parentheses around 40x minus 20.
Yep. And I usually put the parenthesis between the negative and that. Okay, but I'll show you that in a second. First, though, can we factor something out? Is there a number that divides into all of these?
8.
Because, okay, so if you look at the smallest number, which is 16, 16 obviously is not a factor of them because 16 times 3 is 48, so it won't go into 40. But then the next largest factor of 16 is 8, and 8 actually divides into all 4. So let's factor an 8 out of everything. So if we factor an 8 out, then we'll have 2x cubed plus, what's that going to be, 16, I think? 16x squared minus 5x minus 40. Okay, so we factored an 8 out of everything. Now we're dealing with just smaller numbers. So now we want to group what? First two and the last two. So let's group these two and these two. Let's ignore the 8 for right now. Okay, we'll just put that with our final answer. So 2x cubed and 16x squared. What's the greatest common factor? 2x squared, right? So if we factor 2x squared out, what's left? 1x plus 8. Now, since this is minus, we want to put a minus here. And then what about 5x and 40? What can we factor out? 5. Now, we're factoring out a negative 5. So what is negative 5x divided by negative 5 going to be? Positive x. Thank you. And then when negative 40 divided by negative 5, positive 8. So we factored out a negative 5. So that's why we'll have a positive x here and a positive 8 there, because it's a negative. Okay? So now, since they match, we have x plus 8, x plus 8. They match, right? So now we can group what together? Come on, you guys, wake up, wake up, wake up. 2x squared minus the 5 times the matching term, x plus 8. And what did we factor out at the very beginning? An 8. Okay, let's do 2 more on our assignment, okay?
Oh, wait. So the
Okay.
blue line and the green line, they
Or-
don't mix at all.
Which one, William?